But you gotta start thinking a little bit bigger. You know, life's a little bit bigger than the next fun weekend you're gonna have. One thing for sure is in the medium term. You have short term, medium term, long term goals. In the medium term is probably how am I gonna move out of my parents' house? How am I gonna have a little bit of extra money put together so that way I can pay for rent at someplace else, even if I weren't entirely working here. Maybe I got a part-time job making some money. I have enough money in a mini nest egg that can last me for a couple months while I'm searching for a job and I'm outside of my parents' house and I get myself adjusted to a budget. So that's one thing. Number two, transportation. Maybe you want to get into car ownership. And number three, maybe a home or someplace a little more stable like that. Number four, maybe you want to get married and have kids someday. It seems like the average marriage age has been increasing. The average rate at which you're having kids, people are waiting longer and longer to do that. Because what's the number one reason why for this generation? They don't have any money to do it, or so they say. So why start thinking about saving a little bit of money together so that way you can help start a family one day? These are just a couple ideas.
Let's say an average college student is 18 to 21 years old. In that specific demographic, what should the 18 to 21-year-old be saving for or be thinking about to be financially secure in the future?
I think along the same lines as to what Ken was saying, it's about purchasing freedom and options. So, and those are all very good examples of the different freedoms and options you want. Do you want to move out? Do you want to move hard? Do you want to have the ability to spend some time and find the right job? And so it all depends on your priorities, right? If you're planning on staying at home regardless, then perhaps it's having the freedom to get around and visit places, and so saving for the car becomes the first thing. Or if you're planning on taking time to start your own business once you're out of college, then saving up for that. So it all comes down to your own purpose, right? So your own intent. Always ensure that you're prepared to start making your student loan payments as soon as you graduate, because you've got a grace period and then you're going to have to start doing that. But I think if you frame it as once you're out in the real world, there are going to be a lot of constraints and demands on you. And so what you need to figure out is what constraints or demands you want to be free of and focus on.
Well, I can think about it and jump in.
Of course.
I think the most important thing you can do is as you're coming up with those goals or trying to figure out what kind of freedom you're trying to get, is create a budget. I think that it's a pretty simple exercise to do, but it forces you to kind of be accountable to yourself and make sure that the numbers work. And if they don't work, how you can bridge the gap between the two. A lot of people don't like creating budgets because it forces them to accept the reality of their financial situation, but it's a really simple and powerful thing that you can do. And that's the thing that we tend to recommend, that every person, particularly young adults, do that first, because that forces you to check out your credit card debt, check out your student loan debt, figure out how much you can afford for rent. Does it make sense? Can you really afford that apartment, or should you be somewhere a little bit maybe further away from the subway and save some more money so that you can actually afford your situation without getting into that?
I also think that it has to be a part with being a little, logical and rational. For example, I go to Pace downtown Manhattan. We have campuses, we have dorms for $19,000 a year. $19,000 a year. I commute from Long Island every day, 3 hours round trip. I know people whose parents live on the Upper West Side, Upper East Side, but they want to live on campus. 3 subway stops away to get the college experience and have fun. And I look at these people and I just don't understand. They take out loans with high interest rates for $19,000 a year, plus another tuition which costs $37,000 a year. And to me, I look at them and I don't understand. I don't understand where they're coming from to get that college experience for that kind of money. So to me, it doesn't make sense.
I would just counter with it. I agree with what you're saying, but a lot of people, I think it's okay to do that if you accept the reality that you're going to have that $50,000 of debt from that $37,000 plus the 19 or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it is fun to live the norm. It is like so. I think that as long as people are accepting the reality of their situation, then it's okay. But a lot of people, and tons of my friends do this all the time, they just kind of pretend like they can, ignoring the problem is their idea of the solution. They will never create a budget. They'll hope that at the end of the month they can take their credit card bill. If not, they'll just let it grow. And putting things off like that can have really big implications 5 years, 10 years down the line that you just aren't really aware of.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree. I hear what you're saying there. People going into excessive amounts of debt towards something that might be a creature comfort, which is a convenient place to live, when in fact you might have, convenient lodging with your parents for a few more years. But again, you're so rambunctious to want to get out, live your life, be independent, and then you get some loan documents in front of you to sign here, and you're free for 4 years or 5 years, and then guess what? 5 years from now, you got to start making a payment every month, and you're responsible for that, whether you like your education or not. Okay, so there's a little bit of I call it cognitive dissonance. When you're 18 years old, they're telling you you're an adult, you can vote, you can run your life, you can do your own thing. All you gotta do is fill out some forms, and here you go to college. In a couple years, you'll be having a higher income, it'll take care of itself, right? Well, actually, you wake up 4 or 5 years later, you figure out, oh wow, I'm really responsible, I'm on the hook for something. I gotta own up to this responsibility. So there's always gonna be a certain amount of students who are more excited about the experience than they are about the reality. And that's what's happening in higher education right now in some respects. Not in all respects. Sometimes the right investment, you can go down, there's some colleges in Texas right now that work in STEM fields that are yielding jobs to people working in the oil industry making $100,000 at 23 years old. So maybe it was worth it for them to go to Texas, live on campus, go to school, and go $80,000 into debt for a good degree for that type of field, because you know what? They're making $6,000 a month after they graduate. They can budget it now. But if they don't do it the right way and don't get the right knowledge along the way, then they have high debt and low income potential. Now you're stuck, and that's the big danger I see happening.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think on a slightly different note, because I agree with all these points, is that one of there have been many benefits to sort of the creation of social networks and the advent of the internet, but I also think there are a lot of disadvantages, which is that your peer comparisons have dramatically changed, right? So your expectations for what your experience should be and what your accomplishments should be at certain points are actually, they've been reset in a way that when I went to school, which wasn't that long ago, were very different, right? So when you look on Facebook and you see your friends are enjoying nights out, vacationing, and they're living on campus, you begin to set this bar for yourself that may not necessarily be right for you. So one of the things that I say is, Facebook and Twitter and all these other social networks are important to keep in touch with your friends. But try to sort of ground yourself with, making sure that your expectations are in line with the reality of what you're going to be able to do once you graduate and what you're able to afford to pay. I think a great exercise is meet somebody or find somebody who's, an older friend of a colleague of yours who's graduated and working, and ask them, what is it like now that you've got, $100,000 in student loans, are making, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year? What are the challenges that you're seeing? What would you have done differently? Would you have stayed on campus? Would you have done that semester abroad? Because they are so recent to the experience that they can tell you right away, listen, that extra $1,000 a month that I'm now paying in student debt is really killing me because I can't get a car, I can't get an apartment, I can't do X. And you lose sight of that when you're stuck in this context of hanging out with friends who may not necessarily have that perspective yet.
Right, yeah. Next question is for Suraj, but obviously anybody just jump in. What are some tips for avoiding debt as a student or a young professional?
$20 question. That's like the amount for student loans. But there's a couple of things you can do. First is before you actually take on that student loan debt. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't take advantage of a lot of the other types of financial aid that are out there, like scholarships. Mostly because it takes a little bit of time and effort to actually complete the forms. But there is a lot of free money that's available if you meet the requirements, whether that's academic performance or being involved in a certain organization, like scholarships, things like that. Or there's grant money if you kind of work part-time. I'll let Ken answer that part of it in a little bit. I'm sure he knows more about it than I do. But I think the first thing is before you take on that debt, just understand what the options are and what's available to you. Jumping ahead 4 years after you graduate, I think that one of the most important things you can do is try to get out of credit card debt as fast as possible. So if you do have credit card debt, paying off your payments in full every month, making sure you can reduce that balance down. It's probably one of the most important things that you do. The interest rate you'll get charged on that is typically around 15, 20, 25%, which is significantly higher than probably any other kind of debt we have.
Very good. I mean, when it comes to loan debt, it's going to be hard to deal with. First of all, there's a couple things you have to consider when you're going in to school and the pressures you're facing to try to make a decision. It's like everybody wants you to hurry up and figure it all out about what your life is going to be between the age of 18 and 22. I was just talking to somebody in the audience during the last talk earlier today who's very nervous about their future. And they're I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. I don't know how I'm going to do all this stuff. And I can feel just the pressure in the sound of their voice, right? They're 16 years old. I'm saying to myself, if you're not sure what you want to do for the rest of your life at 16, you're normal and okay, just like everyone else who's 16 years old. No one really knows exactly what they want to do for the rest of your life. I mean, all right, maybe LeBron James kind of knew what he was going to do when he was 18, okay? But for most people, it's kind of like you're not really too sure. You're tiptoeing your way in the water to feel the best path for you. So maybe when you're 18, you don't need to overcommit to student loan debt. Look for a lower cost alternative for your education through something local, and that way you can lower your debt exposure early on. And then once you figure out what you really like and what you're motivated for, and you get to finish your degree at a bigger school, maybe transfer, and then focus student loan debt to be used towards the relevant knowledge to help you get a career. Here's the thing about higher education. It's very hard to accurately price the value of an education because you don't know what it's worth until after you've received it. That's one of those quotes you want to write down when you're thinking about this stuff, okay? You don't know the value of education until after you've received it. So what we have is a lot of people who think they're paying for a high-quality education that may not be what they need for their life, and other people getting tremendous deals out of the schools they find that give them the right knowledge without having to go too far into debt into it. You got to manage the process year by year, step by step.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the kids going into kindergarten today, right? We're training them with skills and tools that are supposed to fit the requirements for the current economy. But I don't think anybody here can tell us what is going to be happening 25 years from now. What kind of coding skills, what kind of marketing skills, what kind of sales skills you're going to be needing to survive in that type of economy. So it's just a systemic problem. It's no one can predict the future. But when you get to that age of 16, 17, 18, you start realizing that you're responsible now because nobody's going to tell you or give you an answer. You have to find your own. And it's fine. I mean, I'm in my mid-30s and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. All I know is that I'm just going to do what interests me, what I can be passionate about, and I'll find ways to create value that way. That said, I think the thing that you can do is, as much as possible, I think you should graduate with no credit card debt. I know that there are some instances, my wife is an example, where she just couldn't afford books and so on, so she had to put it on a credit card. The first thing she did was pay that off as quickly as possible. If you have that mindset of realizing that this is the biggest unanswered question out there, which is what are the skills and tools required to survive in this economy, and what are you good at? You've got to answer both, and they're both really hard questions to answer. It'll keep you cautious. It'll keep you thinking about what are ways to hack the system. How can I find a way to get the most value myself out of it at the least cost? I think it's a challenge, of course, because not only do you have to worry about your studies and your classes, you also have to be thinking a bit strategically about why am I even taking this class, or why am I even at this college or university, because maybe I can get a lower cost education somewhere else, or maybe this class doesn't fit into the types of skills that I need to acquire. I think the worst thing you can do is go into school and say, oh, well, they have liberal arts requirements, so I'm just going to take those classes, and this one looks interesting, and let me just take that. You have 4 years, 2 years, 6 years, depending on whatever degree you're doing, to, get a set of tools that you're going to use later on in life. Try not to waste it, because it's very expensive later on in life to go back and try to get those skills.
I agree.
agree. Kind of thinking back on what Ken said. A couple of years back, he graduated second in his class of around 250 students. Brilliant kid. High GPA, high SAT scores, could have gone anywhere. I mean anywhere. He went to Nassau Community College for 2 years. 2 years, transferred from Nassau to Hofstra, became an actuary, makes hundreds of thousands of dollars now. Instead of paying for 4 years of Hofstra debt, he only pays 2, paid it off. You know, it's smart, it's logical, it's thinking things through.
So much that.
And just one more comment. I think especially with the way, and there is a huge sea change happening in our economy where we're moving towards a knowledge-based economy where, there is going to be a crunch in terms of the number of employment opportunities for people with existing skill sets. And so I think that's what we're coming up against. In the past, it used to be if you went to college, got a good degree, sort of took the required classes and focused on a specific area, you could get a great job. I think that the reason that this is becoming more and more apparent now is costs of education are very high, and the opportunities seem to be disappearing. So, is that going to improve? I don't know if the Fed keeps doing what it's doing, and entrepreneurs keep trying to build new businesses, perhaps, but don't count on it.
Next question is from Mohamed. What are some common spending pitfalls students should avoid?
I think it's losing track of the little things, right? So if you're thinking about the big things, that's great, right? Make sure that you figure out what those big ticket items around, your tuition and your living allowance and all that stuff. But it's the little things that can kill you, right? It's getting that credit card and running up the pizza runs and the beer nights and so on, because what you find is actually this is not a behavior that disappears once you leave college. It continues throughout your life. If you ask the majority of people who have an average of $15,000 in credit card debt, which is what is the average in the U.S., if you ask them, what are the reasons that you've gone into credit card debt? There are typically two. One is I had health expenses and I just couldn't pay for it because I didn't have a savings fund. And the second is I don't know. I just don't know. I use my credit card when I go to the movie theater or when I go shopping and I realize, I've run out of cash on my debit card, so I'm going to use my credit card. And it just adds up. And at the end of the day, you don't want to be paying, interest on a pizza for 5 years because that's just ridiculous. So keep track of the little things, and the best thing to do is pay in cash or use a tool like Khalil or Moven or other sort of innovative tools out there that allow you to keep track of these little things because they can add up very quickly.
Withdraw a certain amount for the week and live off for that cash at least, so you know that this is your spending limit for the week.
Yep.
And if anything, I do have an emergency fund, let's say.
Because I think that the temptation is that if I have a credit card, I can use it for emergencies. But then, 3 months go by and you're like, but that's a really nice leather jacket.
Everything's an emergency.
So you find yourself habituating and moving down the threshold at which you believe it's appropriate to use that type of access. And honestly, if you make that mistake, it's fine. We're all entitled to learn from our experiences. Cut up the credit card, right? And find a way to pay that balance off and get yourself back on track. But it's going to be the little things that will kill you, because you're going to notice when you have to pay the next tuition, but you're not going to notice the $20 and $30 charges anymore.
That's a great point. And to continue with that, just briefly, one thing you can do on a fundamental level is, I think you're starting to get to habits and how bad habits can perpetuate if you don't deal with them early on. Well, if people are taking student loans out to pay for college, guess what? Probably a good habit to develop would be to start making payments on that loan while you're still in school. You don't have to be hitting home runs with $300 payments every month. I'm talking like the money from your work study job, $25, $50 a month, plugging away towards your student loan. Guess what? You're going to lower the cost of it. You're going to build positive credit history, and you're going to be in a position to really knock that debt off after you graduate and save a ton of money.
Yeah.
Just back to credit cards for a second. It's funny because credit cards are actually a brilliant tool because it's so easy to use, but that leads to people abusing that. There's nothing wrong or evil about a credit card. when used responsibly, it helps you as a young adult build credit history so that you can get an apartment, get a job, buy a house one day. The problem is, as Mohamed mentioned, it's really easy to start slipping into bad behaviors. So there's nothing wrong with using a credit card, getting one, using it responsibly, but it's just making sure that you limit yourself to using it when appropriate and paying it off in full.
I mean, one way to do so responsibly, and it's a very simple mechanism, is make sure your parents get the savings, right? Because they will, they'll be your reality check to tell you, hey, I saw you went shopping at, I don't know, whatever, Forever 21 or whatever people go to, and Banana, and you spent so much money, like, you've got a decent wardrobe, why'd you do that? And they will ask the tough questions of you, because your friends may not, you may not, but find a way to create a natural balance for yourself so that things don't get too far out of hand. And if you use it responsibly, and I recommend that starting at an early age, the moment you turn 18 or once you're in college, use a number of really good sites: Credit Sesame, Credit Karma, Quizzle. These are all free sites. They allow you to monitor your credit. They allow you to track it. Credit Sesame is great at providing you with debt options that will be smart and intelligent for you. As long as you use them responsibly, you can begin to build that credit history that can help you through it.
Yeah, I know that back in the day, every college campus had a credit card vendor, and every person, boy, girl, ran up to them and signed up. Now it's even illegal to have credit card vendors on school campuses.
Yeah.
Well, it's biological too. I mean, the centers in your brain that actually allow you to make intelligent and rational decisions aren't fully developed until you're about 25, 26. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you're bad, that you're at a disadvantage. It just means that you have additional experience and wisdom that you need to gain by that age. So you're much more likely to react to rewards-based items. You're much more likely to sort of act on impulses. And every individual is different. You'll find people who are really good at managing their impulses without spending, and then others who aren't. They will get better with age, just because your mind will actually develop and strengthen itself. But be aware of that limitation. It's you're running with one leg hobbled. It's much easier for you to convince yourself that charging that pizza is a good idea now than it will be when you're 30 and you're getting married and you've got expenses on your kids and that kind of thing. You've had enough experience and you've matured. And I don't want to sound politically incorrect, but it's just a biological fact. It's like asking a 5-year-old to drive, right? They don't have the motor control to be able to do it perfectly well. It's not that extreme, but you haven't had that much experience with it, unless you were fortunate enough to have parents who got you the car at a young age, who helped you sort of understand how to make the right decisions, when is it appropriate to use, when is it not appropriate to use.
There's all powerful stuff right there, and I think the big gap right now is technology, because money is becoming intangible. It used to be when I was a kid, right? Count out your cash, right? Go buy my go 5 cents a piece, right? Those days are long gone, and we have these mobile devices now that can help you visualize how much this thing's really going to cost. So guess what? If you're going to go to Starbucks and you're going to pay $5 for a coffee, and you're going to put it on your credit card, there's programs now that can come back with, okay, well, how much does that really cost if you pay with your credit card and it goes to your balance? That actually went from a $5 purchase, which is already too expensive, by the way, to a $14 purchase because you used it with your credit card and paid off over time. So maybe that's what it takes to get in your face, to help trigger that event in your mind, to realize how relevant this stuff is, because everyone's playing Angry Birds, and everybody's on their phone doing all this stuff and talking to their friends and texting left and right. And guess what? What's really important is being missed. But now these new programs that are being put in place can help you recognize and rationalize and realize how important this information is. Great point as well. Great.
A great product is Mint.com, which I'm sure you've heard of. If you link up your bank accounts to it and your credit card statements, it allows you to visualize your expenses in different ways. So you don't even have to do any work of building graph graphs comparing things in there. It pulls in the information so you can kind of see I spent $200 on restaurants last month versus $150 the month before, so maybe it's time to catch that down. So it automatically categorizes your expenses. It's a really effective way of kind of easily getting a snapshot of what you're spending your money on.
And if you decide not to do that, do some really simple math you can get in your head. Think about, okay, $10, right? $10 if I pay off my student loan bidder 8% in 25 years, that's 200%. So that $10 is worth $30 minimum to me, right? I mean, there's more complicated math, but you can do it that easily. So $10 is worth $30 in my student loan. It's worth how much in my credit card debt. If I'm paying 25% interest and I think it's going to take me 5 years to pay off that, right, then that's worth $22.50, right? And if I'm investing that into a retirement account, which if you've got the capacity to do so, even if it's $500 for the entire year, open up an IRA and put some money into it, because if you take that and do 8% a year for 40 years, that $10 is going to be worth $300. So when you begin to look at $10 expenses as, okay, it's either I'm going to put myself in debt $25 on my credit card, I can save myself $30 on my student loan, or I can invest it and save towards a future retirement where it's going to be worth $300. That $10 coffee, that $100 jacket, whatever it is that you're looking at, you're going to begin to look at that $100 jacket and be like, is that worth $3,000?
Final question, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. How can we, as individuals and as a society, improve our financial literacy and our understanding? Very general.
For me, I think the biggest thing we can do is just spend some time trying to educate yourselves and ourselves about what the options are, ways you can save more money or create more wealth. I think generally in the personal finance industry, I think people tend to spend a lot of time focusing on the ways you can cut expenses, but what is equally as important is if you can grow your revenue, your income, whether that's asking for a raise or adding a second job or having a side business. There's a lot of ways, especially with the internet, to learn how to negotiate better or learn how to create a simple site, and maybe even if it's making $300 a month, that's $100 a month that you didn't have before. Engage in the skill set, which especially as you get even more digitally savvy, having those kinds of online skills are really helpful. So I think spending some time in educating yourselves about what the options are, I think that's probably the most important.
I mean, that's a great point. I would say financial literacy and money is so interconnected into so many little decisions that go into your life, ranging from the money you're spending on your coffee to where you're going to go to school to what type of house you want to buy, right? All these have some kind of, whether little or small, some kind of financial literacy that's necessary to understand how to deal with it, right? So how is it relevant to you? You talk to some people that work in different sectors, financial literacy is relevant to them because it helps them do a better job. You talk to a parent, financial literacy is important because it makes sure I have food on the table for my kids, right? So it's relevant to different people for different reasons. So here's what I try to talk to you about. I try to encourage young people to say, I want to learn more so that I can serve more, so that I can earn more, so that I can save more, so that I can, here's the end of it, give more. There's a direction and a point to all this for you. You make it your own. But if you go in that order of, hey, I want to learn more so that I can serve more, so that I can earn more, so that I can save more, so that I can give more and help other people, because now what I learn is relevant to help others, that's going to keep you bound into trying to learn this stuff long term, so that way you can make better decisions as you grow.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think there's a challenge on the industry side and with nonprofits and organizations and foundations in terms of trying to figure out better ways to do this, especially because the pace of innovation in the financial services space has been much faster than the pace of educational advancement. And that's just a gap that I think we're starting to bridge with FinLit with Mint, with a bunch of other tools that are beginning to emerge around that. I think purpose and meaning is very important. If you just go out and you're like, oh, I need to just won't succeed because you will find some of it boring. You will find some of it very rote. Some of it just is like, wow, this is way too complicated, and I'm gonna get confused, and you'll get discouraged. But I think if you have purpose and meaning behind it, if you begin to think of it as, listen, I want to live a certain kind of life. I wanna have a home. I want to be able to give back to my community. I want to be able to, to give my children a better opportunity. Then that will motivate you. And today, I think you're probably initially not going to get in a bunch of situations where you're going to make huge decisions, right? Because getting a mortgage, buying a car, those types of big money decisions are very complicated. And the first time you do it, it scares the crap out of you. You ask anybody who's done it, when they got their first mortgage, when they bought their first car, how nervous were they, right? Right now, you can make a lot of little mistakes that can happen. So you have the opportunity to take this time to basically say, well, let me learn about these big things now, right? Because I do want to have a home. I do want to get a car. I do want to be able to give my children a better chance in the future. And so when it has that meaning to it, then you're going to be motivated to go read about it. You're going to be motivated to go talk to people who have been in your situation. Talk to your parents. Talk to your parents' friends. Talk to people who have been out in the working world for a bit. And sort of ask them, what's the biggest financial mistake you've ever made? And you'd be surprised. People, initially, you'll find some who are like, I really don't want to talk about it because it really was that bad. But a lot of people are willing to share because they know that it was a really bad experience for them and they don't ever want anyone else to go through it. And if you build that knowledge base, you'll find yourself naturally being able to give before you even have money. Because you'll be able to be an advisor, be somebody that people will come to say, hey, I was thinking about getting that department store credit card because they were going to give me 10% off. What do you think about that? And you'll be like, well, listen, I'm trying to make sure my credit is amazing because I want to get a home in 10 years. And I know that it's a good idea in this circumstance, it's a bad idea in this circumstance. Here's how you need to think about it. So, don't do it for its own sake, do it for your sake. Do it for the reason that you have for your life. What do you plan to do with it? And then find ways to use that to get back to others. But in the beginning, absorb as much as you can.
I think it's okay to talk about money. Like for some reason, I blame our parents. They just kind of think it's taboo to talk about money. I think there's just data there that said more parents are comfortable talking about sex than they are talking about money with their kids, which is I think that's crazy. But it's okay to talk about money. Like it's a very important part of all of our lives. It affects pretty much every transaction that we have. It has direct impacts on the quality of our life and our connections and things like that. So it's okay to talk about it, ask questions, try and figure out ways to improve your situation. It's okay to do that.
Yeah. All right, I got the wave off to go. I will take, one or two questions from the audience if any six of you have any questions. Yeah.
That was a question. So I went to your presentation earlier of behavioral finance, but I don't know what you two are. So can we?
Sure, yeah. I'm Suraj. I'm a co-founder of FinLit, which is a financial education media startup that helps young adults like yourselves and us do smart things with money through short videos and tools. So this panel is actually pretty appropriate for me to be on it because we're trying to do a lot of the same things and answer the questions that have been raised here. We think that the existing ways of getting content across to young adults aren't working through traditional blogs or parents or non-existent classrooms and classes. So we think that 1 and 2 minute video clips that people create and curate across the web are a more interesting way of getting you guys to learn about personal finance and actually take action, because that's the important part. It's doing things that can help you save money or not. And I'm co-founder of that. We launched last week in beta at beta.finlit.com. Probably by the middle of the week, it'll be in finlit.com. So feel free to check it out. There's some great tools on there, great